Hello, I'm Bakyoson. When you're watching A News Now, let's take you through today's top stories. Polls have opened in New York as the city gets ready to vote for its next mayor. A top military official in Israel is arrested after admitting to leaking footage of soldiers allegedly sexually assaulting a Palestinian detainee. And former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney dies aged 84. Good evening. Today is election day for New York City, and voters in the 5 boroughs are heading to the polls to cast their votes. But President Donald Trump has warned he may restrict federal funding for the city if Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani wins the mayoral race.
U.S. President Donald Trump has warned he may restrict federal funding for New York City if Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani wins Tuesday's mayoral election. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said it was highly unlikely his administration would provide federal funds beyond the legal minimum should Mamdani become mayor. Mamdani criticized Trump's attempt to influence the mayoral election, emphasized that he will not back down to Trump's threats.
I will address that threat for what it is. It is a threat. It is not the law. And too often we treat everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth as if it is already legal just by virtue of who is saying it. And it is time to finally stand up to the bullies that make these threats, not to become the bullies ourselves.
Recent polls show Mamdani leading the race ahead of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent after losing the Democratic primary.
Meanwhile, the impact of the U.S. government shutdown is deepening on families across the country. With food assistance set to run out, community groups are stepping in to help millions who rely on supplemental benefits.
The U.S. government shutdown is now in its 35th day, tying the record for the longest in history. Millions of Americans are feeling the impact as federal workers miss paychecks and vital programs, including food assistance, are disrupted. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which provides an average of $187 a month to low-income households, has been halted, leaving 42 million people uncertain about their next meal. With the federal government shutdown stretching on, millions of Americans risk losing access to SNAP benefits. In Alexandria, Virginia, 2 mothers are turning frustration into action. Jessica Alicea and Taha Iglesias co-founded a grassroots group, Rooted to Rise, opening a community food pantry to support neighbors who may soon go without food.
We really believe that during this time where the government has their hands in a lot of pots on how people can eat, we wanted to create a resource for people to just come with no judgment. And I know for me, if we have the resources to crowd fund, food for people, we're going to make sure that we help.
Food advocates warn the need is growing. LaMonica Jones from the Food Research and Action Center said children's households make up the largest share of SNAP recipients, and emergency allotments are not enough.
We know that households with children are the highest percentage of SNAP recipients in the country. And so you think of the benefit that those SNAP allotments, as we're going through several waves of the pandemic, we're still dealing with price inflation, we were dealing with supply chain shortages. So there was a lot of compounding issues, again, that those SNAP emergency allotments allowed us to see our way through. Now what we're hearing from families is this is not enough.
Joseph Williams, a former senior editor, noted that many families have already gone hungry.
It means that they're likely have gone hungry at least 1, maybe 2 days. Keep in mind the SNAP payments were supposed to start again on November 1st, and those benefits have not been restored. Now, they've gone to court, some states and some anti-hunger advocates, to try to get that government moving and to get the president moving on these things. But he's been very stubborn about this. He now says via social media that he'll relent and let these benefits flow, that after he hears from his lawyers.
Federal judges recently ordered the USDA to use contingency funds to pay benefits immediately, but the agency maintains funds are limited and reserved for emergencies. While Washington debates, Rooted to Rise is stepping in, providing food and a sense of community to those facing hunger.
Former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney has died at the age of 84. His family said he died from complications caused by pneumonia and heart disease. Cheney was one of the most powerful figures in U.S. politics. He served as vice president under George W. Bush and played a major role in the 2003 Iraq invasion and the war on terror after the September 11 attacks. Before politics, Cheney worked in business and was the head of the defense company Halliburton. He was also a keen hunter and once made headlines after accidentally shooting a friend while hunting. In 2024, Cheney surprised many by supporting Democratic candidate Kamala Harris in the presidential election. Now, the former top lawyer in the Israeli military has been arrested after she admitted leaking footage of Israeli soldiers allegedly sexually assaulting and attacking a Palestinian detainee, and then lying about her actions to Israel's High Court. The video had originally been leaked to the press in early August, in the midst of a right-wing backlash following the arrest of a number of soldiers. Here is more.
Israel's chief military advocate general, Major General Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, had resigned from her job on Friday and was then declared missing by her family. She was subsequently found alive on Sunday and taken into custody and remanded until Wednesday on charges including fraud, abuse of office and obstruction of justice. Another former prosecutor, Matan Solomesh, was also detained. Tomer Yerushalmi is accused of leaking a video showing soldiers abusing a Palestinian detainee at the Seder Teiman military base in August 2024. An investigation into the footage led to criminal charges against 5 soldiers and stirred an uproar. The inquiry drew condemnation from right-wing politicians and prompted protesters to storm 2 military compounds after investigators sought troops for questioning. The case has intensified concerns over the treatment of Palestinian detainees at the military base, where Israel is reportedly holding numerous bodies from Gaza. The Strip's health ministry said on Monday that it had received the remains of 45 Palestinians released by Israel through the International Committee of the Red Cross, a day after militants returned the remains of 3 Israeli soldiers killed in the Gaza war. The latest handover brings the total number of Palestinian bodies returned under the ceasefire agreement to 270. Since the ceasefire began on the 10th of October, Hamas has released the remains of 20 Israeli hostages, with 8 still held in Gaza. For each Israeli returned, Israel has handed over 15 Palestinian remains. The health ministry said forensic teams have identified 78 bodies so far and continue examinations according to official medical procedures before releasing them to families. According to the ministry, many of the bodies bore signs of abuse, including beatings and bound hands, and were kept without identification. It added that around 1,500 Palestinian bodies are believed to be stored at the Sder Teiman base in southern Israel.
Washington is pushing for a stronger international role in Gaza. The United States has circulated a draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council that could see foreign troops deployed to Gaza as part of a new stabilization mission.
The United States has informed members of the United Nations Security Council of its desire to establish an international security force in Gaza that would operate on the ground for at least 2 years. The proposed draft resolution would give the U.S. and other participating countries a broad mandate to govern Gaza and establish a new security architecture following the Trump-brokered ceasefire. U.S. officials have told the press that they hope that this force will start operating in Gaza by January. And officials have said that this new security entity would be an enforcement force and not a peacekeeping force in the traditional sense of the word. This force would involve troops from several participating countries and would be established in consultation with the new Gaza Board of Peace that is now chaired by President Trump.
The draft, labelled sensitive but unclassified, outlines a 2-year mandate for the International Stabilization Force, lasting through the end of 2027 with the option for extension. The force's tasks include demilitarizing Gaza, dismantling militant infrastructure and helping train a new Palestinian police force to take over security responsibilities. A transitional body known as the Board of Peace would coordinate reconstruction efforts and governance until the Palestinian Authority completes its reform program. A list of countries, including Indonesia, Turkey, and Egypt, have expressed willingness to join the mission. A-News earlier reported that Washington had asked Azerbaijan to join the mission. However, Baku has not yet made a final decision, stressing that any participation must be based on a UN Security Council resolution, ensuring international legitimacy and a clear mandate.
Meanwhile, in southern Gaza, residents say daily life remains a struggle despite a fragile ceasefire. Many in Khan Yunis are battling soaring prices, shortages, and uncertainty about whether peace will hold.
In Gaza's Khan Yunis market, life remains a daily struggle for survival. Vendors and displaced families say that despite the recent truce, basic goods are still out of reach, prices fluctuate wildly, and the fear of another escalation looms large. Among the stalls of bread and vegetables, many try to earn just enough to get through the day.
The economic situation is very difficult and the social life is tragic because of the ongoing blockade and the high cost of living in general. What we sell, what we make a living from, is what we use to eat. Beyond that, it's very hard for us to do anything bigger than that. Overall, the economy in Gaza is extremely difficult.
The US brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has reduced large-scale fighting, enabling limited aid deliveries and partial troop withdrawals. But intermittent strikes persist, leaving residents uncertain about what lies ahead.
Every day there are strikes. Every day there are rockets. Every day there are shrapnels. A few days ago, I went to the camp in Trans. The Israelis had reached there. So where has the war ended?
While Washington continues its efforts to advance a 20-point peace plan aimed at ending the conflict, progress has been limited. Key issues remain unresolved, including the question of Hamas's disarmament and the timeline for Israel's withdrawal from Gaza.
Tensions have escalated in El Fasher, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, in recent days. Fierce clashes between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces have forced thousands of residents to flee their homes. The conflict has worsened after the RSF captured several strategic areas, including Bara town and Al Fasher itself. According to the International Organization for Migration, around 71,000 people have fled Al Fasher and nearby areas since last week, seeking shelter in overcrowded camps about 40 kilometers away. Witnesses say that displaced families have faced violence, torture, and killings while passing through RSF-controlled checkpoints. The United Nations has warned that if the fighting continues, the humanitarian crisis in the region will deepen further.
Countless people have died, including my son, a soldier, who was martyred in El Fasher. Another son was wounded in the chest and eye and underwent surgery yesterday. Random shelling kills at least 30 to 40 people every day. We have witnessed so much suffering in El Fasher, but we've never seen anything like it since we were children. The roads are full of bandits on motorcycles and camels. They beat people, steal their money and everything they own, even their blankets.
A protest over rising organized crime in Mexico turned violent, prompting police to fire tear gas to disperse crowds on Monday. The unrest follows the assassination of a mayor during festival celebrations. Let's take a look.
Protesters and police clashed in the Mexican city of Morelia after demonstrators took to the streets over the assassination of Uruapan Mayor Carlos Manzo, who was gunned down during a public festival on Saturday. Manzo, who had served as mayor since September 2024, was a vocal critic of organised crime. He had repeatedly urged the federal government to do more to combat criminal groups and had publicly expressed fears for his own safety. His killing, carried out in front of children and families in the middle of a community celebration, has deepened frustration and alarm. Crowds gathered outside the Michoacan government palace on Monday demanding justice and an end to rising violence.
Unfortunately, around the corner you can get killed. Things can go really bad. We're tired as a people. If you want to be an entrepreneur, make money, the cartels or the government will screw you over. We're fed up with this.
Uruapan, known as Mexico's avocado capital, sits in the heart of Michoacan's booming avocado-growing region, a lucrative sector that has increasingly drawn the attention of organized criminal groups. Several politicians, including other mayors, as well as journalists, have been killed in recent months. Manzo's assassination follows the killing of the mayor of Tacambaro, Salvador Bastidas, in the same city back in June.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the deepening impact of the U.S. government shutdown, from unpaid federal workers to growing pressure on political leaders. See you shortly.
It's often said the world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight and all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Johnny.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm J-Dad. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan, Portugal,
Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back to A News. The United States is on the verge of the longest government shutdown in its history. With no agreement yet between President Donald Trump and Democratic leaders, the effects are increasingly being felt across the country. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers are going without pay. Airports are experiencing staffing shortages, and millions relying on food assistance could soon see benefits sharply reduced. To discuss the political stakes and social consequences, we're joined now by Daniela Mello, political scientist joining us from Boston. Daniela, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Daniela, how did this shutdown reach such a prolonged and tense standoff?
Well, shutdowns are something that have happened periodically in U.S. politics, certainly more in the recent 20 years than ever before, but they have become a fairly common occurrence. However, I would say that the current polarization and the current attitude of the president also towards Congress are all contributing factors to the length of this shutdown. The polarization is clear. This has become very much Democrats against Republicans sort of move. This is the first time that the Democrats, taking advantage of the fact that the Senate needs to have 60 votes to pass this resolution, what we call a filibuster, right? Basically took advantage of this to pressure the administration and to pressure the Republican Congress to actually back down on the cuts that they had included in their upcoming budget for the following year, which would increase substantially the cost of health plans for Americans, what we refer here to as Obamacare. We're talking about increases for most people starting in about January of somewhere between 40 and 70% in the cost, given the cuts that the Republicans approved earlier in the year. So the Democrats saw here an opportunity to, for the first time since President Trump came to power, really take a stand, take a position, and not back down until they were able to get not just their constituency, but the Americans in general, the ability to defray some of the costs that are supposed to go up in the coming 2 months. Some of them are already going up. So here we see the polarization. On the other hand, this president has always been, and I say always, I mean at least during this term, has been willing to act without the help of Congress. So President Trump doesn't seem particularly concerned that his legislative agenda would be stuck, because most of his legislative agenda has actually been an agenda of executive orders. Congress has been not completely paralyzed, but really almost non-functional even before. I mean, this is a Congress that hasn't been able to actually operate in the normal way since President Trump came to power, and that has been bypassed by the president at every turn. So there is, on one hand, a fight that is a fight between right and left, and the president doesn't feel that he has to back down from it. On the other hand, the Democrats have very little to lose. And in fact, what the polls suggest in the United States is that, most Americans say that both Democrats and Republicans are to blame for the shutdown, but those numbers are higher when you ask them about President Trump's responsibility and the Republicans' responsibility. So there's an edge there, and the Democrats seem to be gaining some advantage with public opinion in this battle.
Daniela, historically, how significant is this shutdown compared to previous ones in U.S. politics?
It's very significant because as of today, it is the longest shutdown that we've had historically, and we are finally entering into a period in which several absolutely essential services are being cut. So at the beginning of our conversation, you were mentioning airports, traffic controllers. There's all sorts of services that are affected by the shutdown. It's not just people that work directly for the federal government. For instance, the big issue this weekend was the access to SNAP benefits. SNAP benefits, SNAP is the name of the program that allows millions of Americans to have basically a subsidy for food. And many, many, many Americans depend on the SNAP benefits, even though they're not huge. I believe that the average SNAP benefit is about $6 and change a day. However, basically the government ran out of money, right? The government doesn't have the ability to go get the funds to, due to the shutdown, to go get the funds to actually fund every single state so that people can receive their SNAP benefits in their cards. They have this type of credit card where they receive their SNAP benefits and then they can use them at specific supermarkets to buy certain types of foods. So this is dramatic. I'll give you an example. I live in Massachusetts, which is considered a very wealthy state in the United States, but it still has huge discrepancies. And in the city of New Bedford, where I live, about 50% of the city's 100 million people rely on SNAP benefits to some level. So we are talking about families not being able to put food on the table for their children. We're talking about disabled, elderly people not being able to have 2 meals a day, you know, if this food doesn't come through. So the president was ordered by 2 different courts over the weekend to make the payments regardless, basically to find the money. And the president has decided to not challenge those rulings. However, only about half of those benefits are going to be paid. So the United States spends about $9 billion a month in these benefits, and the president is only willing to use the contingency fund that the USDA has for SNAP benefits to pay them out, which is about 50%. So people are looking at $3 a day on average.
Daniela, in your opinion, could prolonged cuts to food benefits trigger broader social unrest or political backlash?
Absolutely. I mean, there is such a thing as a breaking point. Clearly, we haven't reached it yet. People have not yet started taking to the streets in large numbers to protest the shutdown, but there's increasing pressure. And in the United States, as congressmen go home, they will probably start seeing that pressure first at home when individuals will start protesting at the local level to get their representatives in Congress to actually find a solution to this. This weekend, the president basically challenged the Republicans in the Senate to do away with the filibuster, which is something that they're not willing to do or haven't been willing to do historically, because whatever party you know, the Republicans are in power right now, the Democrats could be in power next, and the filibuster basically helps the party that is in the minority to have some sort of leverage. That doesn't seem like a solution that is likely to yield benefits very quickly because some senators are reticent to do it. So we are potentially looking at a continued prolonged shutdown unless there is serious unrest and serious mobilization and pressure on congressmen to pressure the president as well.
So what do you think, what are the political calculations for both sides? Who stands to lose more if the shutdown continues?
It's hard to predict, as it was hard to predict when it first started. This was a gamble, definitely, by the Democrats, but the Democrats didn't have much to lose. If you look at the polls over the past year, the level of dissatisfaction with the base of the left, with the Democratic Party, has been tremendous. I mean, Democrats have been deeply dissatisfied with the leadership of the Democrats in Washington. And this is the ability, this is the chance that the Democrats had politically to take a stand about something that the electorate does care about. It might be relevant, as the Democrats have reminded Americans very much that a huge swath of recipients of the subsidies for healthcare are actually Trump voters. They're actually in red states in particular. They are the ones who benefit the most. So this cuts across the electorate as an issue of concern, obviously, and the Democrats are hoping that that's going to buoy their support early on, building up to the midterm elections that are still 1 year away. They need to solidify this. And they seem to be, the polls certainly seem to indicate that the Democratic electorate supports the positions that the Democrats are taking. So they are unlikely to change course in the short term unless this truly becomes untenable. And the food program is certainly a good example of that.
Daniela, beyond the immediate crisis, what long-term damage could this shutdown do to trust in government institutions?
That's an excellent question. Trust in government institutions is at all-time lows in the United States. Just this morning, I was looking at the latest Quinnipiac poll, and approval for Congress is, for lack of a better word, miserable. It's in the 30% or so. So Congress, in particular, is seen as completely ineffective, is seen as unwilling to act, unwilling to use its co-equal power in government to do what the Constitution actually empowers the Congress to do, and basically waiting for, in the case of the Republicans, basically waiting for the president to tell them how to act and how to vote. So Congress in particular seems to be the institution that is most directly affected by this. Now, trust in Congress tends to be always on lower numbers than trust in the other branches of government, but we have seen a steady decline in trust in all institutions, in all key institutions, be it the judiciary, be it the executive or Congress, but Congress seems to be the one that is hurt the most.
Danielle Mello, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us. We appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says that Turkey will advance its defense projects and strengthen cooperation with its European allies. This announcement follows recent agreements between Turkey and several European countries involving the supply of aircrafts. Our correspondent Aliya Iman has the details.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced a major acceleration in Turkey's defense ambitions, pledging to move forward rapidly with homegrown projects and strengthen cooperation with Europe. After conducting a cabinet meeting in Ankara, Erdogan said Turkey's domestic defense programs, from military tanks to fighter jets, are entering a new phase. He pointed to the newly opened BMC Ankara production facility, one of the world's top 5, where 250 Altay tanks will be delivered to the Turkish armed forces within 6 years. Erdogan also hailed what he called a new era in air defense, following high-level visits from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, meetings that advanced talks on Eurofighter Typhoon jets. Another major development is that Spain's government has approved the purchase of 45 Turkish-made Hurjet aircraft, a deal Erdogan described as proof of Europe's growing confidence in Turkey's defense industry. Erdogan also reaffirmed that Turkey's next-generation Khan fighter jet is yet to join the Air Force and stressed that the country will continue to make history in defense. This is Aliyah Iman, Istanbul, Turkey, A News.
Officials from Pakistan and Afghanistan are scheduled to meet on Thursday for another round of talks to finalize the details of a ceasefire following the worst border clashes between the neighbors in years. The discussions taking place in Istanbul aim to agree on mechanisms to ensure lasting peace and stability.
Weeks of deadly border clashes have brought Pakistan and Afghanistan back to the negotiating table, this time in Istanbul. The two neighbours are seeking to finalise a mechanism to sustain a fragile ceasefire agreed last month after some of the heaviest fighting since the Taliban's return to power. The violence erupted in early October when Pakistan launched airstrikes against what it called terrorist hideouts on Afghan soil. Kabul condemned the strikes as a violation of its sovereignty, accusing Islamabad of targeting civilians. In response, Afghan forces fired across the frontier, triggering several days of intense shelling and air raids that killed dozens of soldiers and civilians on both sides. The clashes forced Pakistan to close key crossings, halting trade and stranding hundreds of families along the 2,600-kilometre frontier. Mediation efforts by Turkey and Qatar helped broker a ceasefire in Doha on October 19th, which both sides later extended after follow-up meetings in Istanbul. Now, officials from both countries are expected to agree on a monitoring and verification mechanism, part of a wider plan to prevent future hostilities and ensure lasting stability.
Still in Afghanistan, and casualty numbers are now in the hundreds following a 6.3 magnitude earthquake which rocked the northern part of the country near Mazar-e-Sharif on Monday. Rescue teams continue working amid piles of rubble and damaged buildings. Survivors recount the terrifying aftermath and the scramble to care for the injured.
Dust and debris everywhere. These are the words that describe aftermath of Afghanistan earthquake. The quake with a 6.3 magnitude struck near the northern Afghan city of Mazar-e-Sharif, killing at least 20 people and injuring around 600 people. Search and rescue teams are currently working through the widespread damage caused by the earthquake, including significant damage to the tiles and walls of Mazar-e-Sharif's Blue Mosque. In addition, the earthquake caused power outages and triggered a landslide on a key highway, with the death toll expected to rise.
It was around 1 a.m. when the earthquake struck with a strong jolt, and everything went dark as the power went out. For about an hour, there was dust and debris everywhere. When it finally cleared, we saw 2 bodies lying down there, a woman in that area, and 2 wounded people near our shop.
Afghan authorities and the United Nations have dispatched rescue and aid teams to the affected areas. Hospitals in the region have been put on standby to treat the injured. This is the second major earthquake to hit Afghanistan in 2 months, adding to the country's existing humanitarian challenges, which include economic struggles and the return of millions of refugees from neighboring countries.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze has embarked on a working visit to China. According to the Georgian Foreign Ministry, the 2 countries will sign a number of cooperation agreements during his visit. Kobakhidze's China visit is valued as a good opportunity to deepen the close economic ties between the 2 countries. China is one of Georgia's top 5 trading partners. Trade turnover between the 2 countries in 2024 amounted to approximately $1.9 billion. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze's visit to China and what the new cooperation agreements could mean for Georgia's economic strategy and regional ties. Stay with us.
and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back to A News. Georgia's Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze has begun a working visit to China, where Tbilisi and Beijing are expected to sign several new cooperation agreements aimed at deepening their already growing economic partnership. China remains one of Georgia's top trading partners, with trade turnover reaching nearly $1.9 billion last year. Now we'll take a closer look at what this visit could mean for Georgia's economic strategy and regional diplomacy. Joining me now is Dr. Vakhtang Maisaya, political analyst who joins us from Tbilisi, Georgia. Mr. Maisaya, welcome to the program.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me with you and have ability to share with you just some thoughts and ideas dealing with those topics.
So how would you characterize the current state of Georgia-China relations?
Well, I would like to just about mention that Georgia-China's relations just transformed from the simply partnership to the strategic partnership from the date of period of 2013-2024. I would like to mention that initially 2015, Georgia and China, they also signed up a free trade agreement between of just about two our nations. Second, 2023, Georgia and China, they also signed up a special just about strategic partnership agreement, which also just increase this tendency and also just demonstrated about that China also expressed great interest not only to the Georgia at such, but also to the region as well. I mean the South Caucasus and just a Black Sea area. So besides, China and Georgia are cooperating in such field of study, field just of in engagement that are just about international fora, like combating just about terrorism, even just about have very good and boosting up tourist just relationship between the two nations. And I can give you some concrete just about data if you want, just about foreign direct investments between the 2003 2020 2012 they received 132 million in foreign direct in China, and this amount increased fivefold, $65 million between 2013 to 2024. So I would like to mention that just about 25 2012, Chinese citizens registered 451 cases. But between this period of 2013 to 2024, China also just increased this registration of companies up to the 2001s. So also turnover, we also mentioned about the turnover between Georgia and China also almost reached to the $2 billion. So all these figures, I also mentioned that also by 2024, the number of the China's tourists in Georgia has increased 12-fold to and also reached to the 88,000 visitors.
Dr.
So
Masaya,
all these status
you may continue.
indicate that Georgia and China also increasing its interactions and mostly in sphere of the trade, finances, and tourists just about network for us.
So what do you expect to be the main focus of the cooperation agreement signed during this visit?
I guess that this main keystone of this visit of Georgia Prime Minister to China will be just at reach to reach these decisions about China's investment to the Anaklia deep sea port. This is more important because it was like remains some just about uncertainties about when these investments should be just about conducted. And I guess these official visits of Georgian prime ministers will also just put this end of these how to say uncertainties. And of course, I guess these were main provisions why the visits just been organized and been also just paid to. Second, of course, between Georgia and China, we have like just about challenges and many just about risks, mainly about in that field, such just about areas like just about drug trafficking, about just about white collar crimes. Just about there's some of the smuggling of the CBRN elements because in Georgia we detained about three Chinese citizens who just wish to even just to smuggle about two just grams of uranium, which also just very interesting case to consider. I guess both China's and Georgian special services also just discovered this about plot in that case. Moreover, we also had like a similar problems, political problems of the territorial, just about claims about separatist development case and etc. So that's why Georgia and China has quite a lot of and common just rules. Mainly, one incumbent Georgian government also try to maybe distance from the Western community and tries to more get approach with Eurasian just about community. This also, from that standpoint, of course, this visit also will have from the Georgian incumbent government and ruling party just about ruling party perspectives about good from their perspectives and their own minds, just about good fortune for them.
Dr. Masaya, are there domestic political or economic concerns within Georgia regarding increased Chinese investment?
No, generally, no, not so much. Not linked with China. There are some rumors and some concerns about with some Persian Gulf just about investments, Arabic investments, but not with China's one. I can assure you. Moreover, China's investments also just promoted about Tbilisi-Batumi, just about highway transformations, which also just increased Georgia geoeconomic stability provisions. Moreover, China also invests in just about such heavy industries like metallurgy, like just about civil engineering and etc. And of course, it also makes a good fortunes on that case. Also, China also just increased about bank cooperation between the two nations, which also just most important case, I guess. And of course, China has also good economic just about data and from Georgia perspectives, and of course Georgia and China could also share between themselves about their just economic reform or transformations. And I guess the main idea could also be discussed about opportunity to open as a free trade zones in Georgia from China perspective.
Dr. Maisaya, thank you very much for talking to A News. We truly appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
You're up to date with World News for the Hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.